Welcome here, everybody. So my name is Joe Valesky. I'm a naturalist at Wolfridge, and I'm just the one who's supposed to start with pretty pictures and then pass it off to the people with all the brains. So Mr. Smerud, I think that you are first on our agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April version of the Wolfridge 50th Speaker Series. My name is Peter Smerud. I'm the Executive Director at Wolfridge, and it's absolutely wonderful. There are many faces out on this screen right now that are good friends of mine, neighbors, former neighbors, people that know and love Wolfridge. And so I cannot thank you enough for joining us this evening. I'm very excited. And that I also want to make a couple key thank yous, that there are some folks joining us this evening that have really helped to make this happen. That we tonight, with our feature and our subject as farming in the Finland area, and I'll mention a bit more of that in a minute, that tonight's sponsor from the Finland area is the Organic Consumers Association, and a project of the Organic Consumers Association is the North Shore Agroecology Center, who is also sponsoring this evening. And then we have a couple series sponsors that I need to thank as well. And that is the North Star Resource Group and Fortune Financial are both companies that have sponsored this entire Wolfridge 50th Speaker Series. And you know, it was, for many may know this, that we are coming up on that 50th anniversary. In September of 2021, it will be 50 years ago that Wolfridge opened their doors for the first time to schools up in Isabella, Minnesota as the ELC, or the Environmental Learning Center. And it's a rather auspicious occasion. We didn't plan on COVID having the impact it did for this 50th year, but we're rolling with it. And this was one of the absolute wonderful outcomes of that. And this has gone really well. And at the end of tonight, I will tell you what's coming up in May and give you a little teaser for that. So don't let me forget that. Tonight, our subject is farming. And farming in the north, farming in Finland, Minnesota, not the place where often people may think of it. And yet, I really have to say that tonight, vision is only vision until somebody cares an awful lot and works really hard to make that vision a reality. And I am so pleased to have David Abaz, formerly of Wolfridge, and his longtime Round River Farm owner with us this evening, as well as Stefan Meyer from the North Shore Agroecology Center and our own Sarah Meyer. All very talented farmers who tonight we get to celebrate the community of folks here in Finland that have really put this together and are really developing and showing how the people of the Finland area or of the North can raise their own food, grow their own food, and supply those needs up here. And I have to tell you that one of the beautiful things as you learn about the Wolfridge farm this evening is that when this first came to be, this was a staff-led endeavor. I think it's important to know the vision for this first came from the staff of Wolfridge, who 10 plus years ago came to me and said, Pete, we need to do a farm. We're talking sustainability. It's more than just about renewable energy. It's more than about all these other, we need to bring food and how we feed the people of Wolfridge into this. We talked about it administratively, and then we took it to the board and the board of directors, who then bring the scrutiny of, is this good business? Is this good mission? How can we pull this together? All of this came through a number of different groups that said, we need to do this, but the vision was led by the staff. And that feels very appropriate because at that time, that was David Abaz. And so I'm very proud to pass it on now to David Abaz, who helped and led the efforts to get our farm out of the dirt and into production. David, thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to start with a brief kind of visual history of Wolfridge Farm, pass it off to the awesome Wolfridge farmer today, Sarah, and then Stefan will talk about the Agroecology Center, and I'll finish with Round River, and all together we're kind of looking at Finland farms and how we're working together to feed each other and our wider community. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. So it's all about people and planning. And it's about money. And we had a lot of all three things. Carleton College has been a great partner. You can see 100,000 raised in 2013. Altogether, $500,000 raised to build the infrastructure of farming. And it's that infrastructure that makes the reason why we have to keep farms on the landscape going, because of that capital infrastructure. This is the processing building going up. Grants from all over the place, workers from throughout the town. That year is $96,000 raised. Building the educational timber frame through North House Folk School. We took it apart there and reassembled it down here. Had a class at North House Folk School to build the pizza oven. I completed the rocks around it and then the walls. With lots and lots of people, lots and lots of help throughout the entire process. You might recognize some people along the way in the photos, but it's all about production. This is a production first farm. And let's teach about production by producing food and having the kids participate in that. So getting the food to the cafeteria is the ultimate goal. The goal still is to provide all the meals for the students. And I think this year was the first one we provided. We had enough food for everyone this year. So we got there early. Education's always been important. We designed the farm a little bit around that, but not at production. We got big grants from the USDA, started summer camps, which was a joy, getting the kids involved, and along with adult education, and then the whole teachers effort, getting naturalists involved in the teaching and the building. So you can see some friendly faces here along the way. It took a lot of people, a lot of planning, and a lot of time. Some good research has come out and some good recognition as we look at the history. And I'm going to end, and Joe's going to do a quick video of one of our most successful fundraising times.
Excellent. You ready? Here we go. It's all you, Sarah. I don't know how you follow that.
Yeah, geez. Thanks, David. That truly is my most favorite video that y'all had put together. Okay. So David just gave you, I don't know, just a brief overview of what happens at the farm now that it's built. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail with some photos that I've taken during my time at the farm. So I came to Finland, it was 2019, and there was almost 4 feet of snow on the ground. And looking back, was I crazy? Perhaps. So one of the first tasks that I was involved in was fixing up the plastic on the high tunnels. So you see in the photo on the left, the Carleton crew, they were back for another spring break. Whoa, how fun is that? And we were repairing some of the plastic, so it required us pulling it to tape up the tears and the holes from the winter. It's pretty harsh. We talk about the partnerships that we farmers hold, and it was really important to me when I started here that I had folks like Stefan and David and Lisa in the community to just have support from. In the picture on the right, you can see that Stefan is there giving a tour at the Agroecology Center to the Carleton crew. So that's just one of the ways that we share our resources and really educate some of these, these younger folks together. So I really appreciate that. And we also took them up to Round River, and we did a snowshoe hike with David. And Carleton, we continued with them for the week. We did some planting. We got the high tunnel, we woke it up basically. So incorporated cover crop, and started putting peas in the soil. David joined us for the first class of 2019. And here you can see him with the kiddos at the compost. I'm sure he's inspiring them in some way, as he does. Another crew from, let's see, I think that's Central Cass, it looks like. So they're coming from North Dakota. Whoa, they were a hardy crew. Another class here, Hattie, one of the naturalists, looks like she's teaching this class, but we're setting up one of our compost piles and unloading some compost or some sawdust. And that is our source of carbon for all of our food waste. Yeah, and this is kind of what it looks like once we're starting to layer the two. So it's basically greens plus browns, and Isabel and Hattie knew it well. So they brought the food waste down from the dining hall, and they're layering it, as you see there. As you can see, we our best source of carbon around here is indeed sawdust. So Greg Hall was our best supplier, and he's out of Two Harbors, and he had a small mill, and he was a fan of ours, which is great. And Shannon still had her CDL, which is so cool. So she could take the plow truck and go load up and bring back some sawdust in exchange for some veggies. Yep, and there's some of our farm staff. So Cassidy was our farm intern that year, and Federica, our field manager, and we really strategized about this food waste thing. We needed to figure it out. So to keep those nutrients within our boundaries and turn it into something that we can use again. So there's the food waste heading down to the farm in the skid steer. So just a kind of a cool shot. We had a crew, one of the, it was a group that was visiting over the summer, and one of the gentlemen had a drone. So we got some awesome footage, and this is one of the shots of the farm during that summer of 2019. So you can kind of see the layout there. So the three high tunnels, some growing area in between, and then the field area. So in 2019, we really only grew in about half an acre, but we were able to produce about 14,000 pounds of vegetables. That green area that you see beyond the those field plots, that is future growing area, and that's currently in cover crop. You can see the farm building that David showed the construction of, and then the timber frame classroom just to the right of that. And in between is that compost pile that we continued to add to. And eventually that became growing space. So you may have seen in the invitation, the blood, sweat, and tears, those are the names of our high tunnels. So if we reference those, that's what's going on there, because I accidentally might call them by their names. So here are some kiddos. It's just a school group in the spring, and of course it's planting time. So they're actually putting broccoli plugs into landscape fabric, and that was really effective tool for us to deal with a lot of the quack grass. And then Federica and Cassidy were planting some lettuce starts into the bed on the right. And of course, it's one of our popular, most popular activities at the farm is eating, and especially eating pizza. So this, I think, was a family, it was a family camp, and that oven's going strong. A lot of kiddos enjoying pizza. We've got counselors there and naturalists, and definitely a team effort for those camps. And we washed vegetables. We have some family campers helping with carrot harvest and some washing there. Federica is excitedly washing a sink full of salad mix, and everyone loves the salad mix, and that ends up at the salad bar. These days it ends up sometimes at the co-op and in CSA baskets. Oh, here's a photo of the bird. I'm going to call them the bird campers. So these are the folks who come and learn about birds, and there's Danny and her son Alex. And Alex actually worked with us for the whole week during that bird camp. And yeah, he got into it. And this is one of my favorite photos. He was doing some fertilizing for us, and the backpack sprayer got a little heavy on the one end, and he just tipped over backwards. We're getting him back this summer, so we're really excited. And look how proud he is with that head of broccoli. That's just one of my favorites too. So yeah, kiddos all over the place. And it was, we were just on the edge of chaos most of the time, but in just the best way possible. Once you get kids harvesting, it's hard to make them stop. So Hattie and Cassidy are doing a great job reining in all that energy. More pizza. So this is summer camp, making pickles with the kiddos. Yeah, another favorite picture. And then just happy with their pizza. Always thumbs up. Well, okay, so you might ask, is farming at Wolfridge all pizza and rainbows? Well, in general. However, we learned things. We learned that deer love chard and beet green tops. We also learned that root knot nematodes love carrots. Bummer. We learned that kids are good sous chefs. So here we have them chopping up the celery that they harvested, and then they pack it into bags and we put it in the freezer and then send it up to the dining hall as they can use it in soups and things like that. And we also learned that kids will eat tomatoes if you put them on burgers and pizzas. And just some shots of the dining hall here. Yeah, we definitely learned that kids will probably eat what they grow and harvest themselves. They don't always finish their plates, but that's why we collect food waste. And so that's what we're doing here. So before they go up to the dishwashing line, they stop at the food waste bin. And that's what eventually goes back to the farm. And we use it as nutrients. Potato harvest, this is getting towards the end of the season. Here too, with the rest of the chard that Celia and Federica are marveling at. And then one of our open world learning students, they helped us harvest the last of the potatoes that fall. And fall brings rain, which is great. And that allows us to get our cover crop greening up and strong before winter sets in. So we also plant cover crop in the high tunnels, and the kids help us with that. And then we have prep for planting cover crop, and then you can see the little grains just starting to sprout. Now, the end of the season also brings time away from the farm. So with things like conferences. And I share this photo because I met Melanie at a Farm-Based Education Network conference in Baltimore. And of course, she saw my name tag and she said, "Oh, you're from Finland. Do you know David and Lisa?" Well, yes, of course. So a good friend of David and Lisa, of course, I would meet in Baltimore, Maryland. And another great farmer. The end of the season also brings snow. So here Sam is helping to clear off one of the tunnels that we had not yet taken the plastic off. You can also see on the right, we're taking that top plastic off of, I think that's tiers. So that we're doing that every season now to prolong the structure of the tunnel. The snow loads that we get are just too much for the structures. So let's head to 2020. And this is what spring looks like yet again, another 3-4 feet of snow. Plastic is going back on. No kiddos this time. So we've got staff helping out. We've got second-year naturalists helping out. It was really a team effort to get the farm going again. We brought the kitchen staff down and they helped us fell some aspen that were shading blood. We even had a St. Urho's Day parade float. And so Stefan helped us with this one. So Stefan is pulling the wood chipper there, and we're feeding the grasshoppers into the chipper because that's what St. Urho did. He led the grasshoppers. out of the vineyards and saved the grapes. So we had a lot of fun with that. David was handing out onions somewhere in the photo there. That was, instead of candy. So that was really fun. But that was kind of a last hurrah for us. And then we kind of pulled in and thought, well, what do we do now? Well, we just keep farming. So we used the chipper for real. And we chipped up all those aspen limbs that we felled. We used it as mulch. We took advantage of Stefan's generosity with sharing his mushroom spawn, and we inoculated some of those aspen limbs that we felled. So here Caroline is showing Oscar and Leo, inspiring them really to inoculate these logs with spawn. Our compost shipments, so we bring in compost. It's a manure base, and it really gets the soil rich with microbes. And we do a group buy with Agroecology Center and also Round River. So that works out great for the 3 farms. And here we go, we're farming. So that compost gets applied to the fields. So Robbie and Isabel are adding that with buckets. And we continue to prep the beds here. And Sam is using the broad fork to loosen up the soil. And then we plant. That's the fun part. So Hattie came back and she joined Isabel and Katie in planting all of our potatoes. We plant about 100 pounds of seed potatoes. More planting of plugs. So Caroline, Sam, and Robbie helping out there. And then the onions went in. So we marked with a roller, and then we put the plugs in where we've marked them. And this is our roller here. I wouldn't want to farm without it. And it's a really fun tool and user friendly. So a shot of the farm overhead from summer 2020. Kim took these for us. She took a ride with Terry in his little yellow plane that a lot of you know about. But you can see the field has expanded a little bit. So we've got 4 plots here in 2020. We had 3 plots in 2019. So yeah, just fun overhead views. And you can see the field here is planted in cover crop. That's all rye, winter rye, and some vetch. Other projects that we were able to get to in 2020 is, like I said, we felled those aspen. We pulled them out of the brush, and then we started peeling them. Cassidy is shown here on the right, and she's actually chopping the rounds that we've cut. And this will be turned into a cordwood building to infill in the timber frame. And we harvested, and we crop planned. And we harvested some more. So here's Danny, one of our interns. And where'd all that food go? Well, it went a few places, but I think the most inspiring place we got to send our food were the local food shelves. So we partnered up with Arrowhead Transit, and here Allison is one of our locals, and she drove our food 2 to 3 times per week to 2 Harbors, Ely, Chisholm food shelves. We delivered to Silver Bay. And honestly, this partnership is really what kept the farm going last year. Lisa and David were really instrumental in linking us with some regional funding through folks at AEOA, IRRB, and that really got our want to produce food for people, and partnered with the need for folks to have fresh produce. And that partnership really motivated us. We kept working hard, we kept adapting, we just kept thinking outside the fence. And we got rainbows. Our food went to the co-op in Finland. Stefan gave me some guidance on how he was working with the co-op to make that happen through the Agroecology Center. We created a CSA subscription, just a few, about a dozen. Here's some of our baskets. And we put veggies on pizza. And we had some great volunteers, some really talented pizza preppers. And, you know, of course, we have Stefan here, and he puts on a special sprinkle of that farm spice. We also sent our food to the farmers market. We got creative. We made sorbet, we made sauce, we made pesto, all out of veggies. So those value added products were kind of fun to have available at the farmers market, something a little different for folks. And here's Lillian, one of our woofers, and Cassidy last year was our field manager. So she was with us a second year, and they're talking up all the good stuff that they learned how to make. And then fall comes again, and we cover our crops, we keep them warm, we get as much production as we can. We had help from an NCCC crew, a division of AmeriCorps, and they were working on the cordwood project. So they were cutting, peeling, and splitting those aspen. Allison even brought us some chickens. She had a little overstock, and so we were able to use those chickens in kind of cleaning up tiers, and they were able to scratch around and fertilize for us for this season. And we got some eggs, which was great. We planted asparagus in the fall. So here's two of our woofers, Nadia and Lillian, and then Cassidy here. And then Cassidy and Jenna are planting our last spinach for this season. So it's fall again. That happened fast. Leo and Oscar are harvesting our pumpkins. Now, these pumpkins are growing out of that compost pile that we built. So we had really lush crop out of those nutrients that we brought down from the dining hall. And we also had help from the NCCC crew harvesting our last crop of carrots, and they are bunching them and washing them. And those also went to food shelf. We had a really special treat. We got to move the Voyager canoe. So we took a trip with our woofers and the NCCC crew. So we have Lillian, Nadia, and Mark. And Mark is actually going to be joining us in Finland very soon here and living here and working at the Agroecology Center with Stefan. But yeah, we really inspiring folks. They're just here to learn about farming. And NCCC crew helping us take off the plastic. So that's really starting to close up the season. And all of a sudden it's spring again. That happens so fast. So it's spring 2021. We're adapting again. We're rolling with what we have. We brought on another NCCC crew, a really inspirational crew. They put on the last, they put the plastic on the last tunnel, which was blood. Now, one thing that's very different from last year, you know, we had these different new enterprises. This year, David can tell you more about this project, but it's a tree planting project called the Forest Assisted Migration Project. And we are planting trees that are from south of here, more so central Minnesota, that will adapt to the climate. We know it's changing. And we're getting species such as red oak. And here, John and BJ are planting the first ones. We'll be growing them on, and then they will be outplanted next spring by crews deployed by the Nature Conservancy. The NCCC crew this spring, they did so many projects already. They're still here. They're here for one more week. But we worked on rebuilding our garden beds. We planted microgreens. They seeded a lot of the trees. They seeded all of the yellow birch and the white pine. Here they're working on the oaks. They tightened up all the hardware in the high tunnels. In the background, Sasha's wiring a new blower fan, doing a little electric work. They're finishing up splitting the cordwood for the infill in the timber frame. So if none of you have seen the cordwood building, just Google it. It's just beautiful stuff. And with the resources we have in Finland, it's a really good way to build. And it's beautiful. So Jason's really hit that one right on the head. And I think the most inspired I've been by them is their work rebuilding our fence. So we lost a bit of our fence, David could probably say for sure. But they're rebuilding it. It's going back up. They're doing such a great job working together, and they're really dedicated. Excuse me, they're really dedicated to it. Some of the shots of the seeds that we're planting into the tube. So we've got yellow birch on the left. In the middle, there's white pine, and on the right, that's a red oak that has rooted or sent its radical out, and it's starting to sprout. And then here's Sasha watering in all the seeds that they've just planted. And we only, like I said, we only have a week left with the crew, which I'm already starting to lament. But it's been wonderful, and I'm looking forward to May to see who's the next crew who's going to come help us. We are looking forward to having 3 AmeriCorps members starting in June, and we'll probably have some woofers come help us out too. So things are looking good. Stefan, you are next.
Okay. Well, Sarah, I will say that I don't mind having nothing but rainbows and pizza on a farm. Those are 2 of my favorite things. Welcome, and everybody. Again, my name is Stefan Meyer. I am with the North Shore Agroecology Center. This is a project of the Organic Consumers Association. Let me get a second here. And of course, we're located here in Finland, Minnesota. And if you want to know more about what the Organic Consumers Association is all about, go ahead and check out their website. They work on a lot of national projects around consumer advocacy and education. So I'm going to show you kind of what's been going on in the North Shore Agroecology Center. It's been around here in Finland for about 5 years, and I've been the farm manager for the past 4. And it's a 12-acre parcel of land located in our lovely downtown Finland. So this is actually zoned residential land. But most of what we are working on is on that kind of central clearing area there. But we're about 5 or 6 miles away from both Round River Farm and Wolfridge Farm. And you can see the Organic Consumers Association national headquarters there. Yes, in Finland, Minnesota. So what we are doing is we are focusing on kind of where Wolfridge is more of the vegetable focus. We are focusing on the perennial agriculture and regenerative agriculture. And what we're working on is basically reforming this piece of land with the kind of the mission of education, research, and demonstration for small scale diversified farms and homesteaders in cold climate temperate zones. Which kind of fits Finland, as you could see from all the lovely snow fields that Sarah was sporting there. So basically, again, our vision here is to experiment with a lot of different fruits, nuts, berries, mushrooms, bees, herbs, kind of weaving it all together. And trying to show and demonstrate how a small piece of land can be productive while we also explore new varieties, new directions, and hopefully inspire some others to come visit and get educated and take things away with them. So one of my favorite techniques to use when I work is Hugelkultur, which is basically a method of using wood and a little bit of soil and other organic matter to create beds on top of, well, like you can tell here, a barren moonscape. This was gravel fill that was brought in and filled in around our deep winter greenhouse there. And so when I arrived in spring of 2017, it was a lifeless, barren landscape. And so what I did is I used the technique of Hugelkultur. And what I did is I used a bunch of wood that was lying around on the property from the previous landowners. The land had been cleared and even bulldozed previously for a housing development that never happened. And then had kind of, you can tell in the background, it kind of regrown with grasses and some shrubs because it had just kind of been ignored. But they left a big pile of rotting wood for us. And so I was like, aha, this is how I convert a landscape into abundance. Using the materials on hand, basically. I then started planting it with cover crops. And why cover crops? Well, because cover crops, they are living roots. They delve into the soil. They create living connections with the fungal elements. They can fix nitrogen. And you can see down here in the right-hand picture, there's some flowering clover in there. So in this process of regenerating and building, we're also aiding the pollinators. There were times in there I couldn't actually walk because there were so many bumblebees and honeybees and everything else that they would, kind of start buzzing and getting annoyed if I got too close. But one of the things I believe firmly in is as we create, we work in beauty as a function. Because we not only need to feed our bodies, we need to feed our communities, but we also need to feed our souls. And to me, regenerating and regenerative agriculture it's a journey and it's a process, and it needs to feed all parts of us. So as I love to work with stone and wood and the earth, I aim for a certain type of beauty. Maybe it's not everybody's beauty, but it's mine. So in a few short years, you can see what Hugelkultur did. So from the spring of 2017 to the summer of 2020, now these Hugelkultur beds are filled with all sorts of medicinal herbs and culinary herbs and pollinator-friendly plants. Up here in the right, this is swamp milkweed, which I was doing my own little monarch butterfly capture and release system. So I'd save them all from the birds, because the previous year, as I watched these lovely monarchs grow, then all of a sudden the next morning, like birds would just descend and all the caterpillars would disappear. So I said, aha. And so I actually captured about 75 caterpillars and was able to release about 60 monarchs this past year, which was a beautiful and wonderful process. But that's part of the process of regenerating a piece of landscape and creating it and filling it with life. And I like how Peter had mentioned vision, because it really does always come back to that vision. You have to have a vision, and then you have to dive into the work, but then you always have to step back away from that vision again and kind of like reassess your work. And so, just like Sarah had mentioned, they were capturing organic waste from their cafeteria and bringing it down to the farm. Well, we don't have a cafeteria that we're feeding, lots of students with, but there's one of the problems that we see out there in our environment is a lot of organic matter is going into the waste stream, and tapping into that and bringing that back into the land to heal the land, to build soil is really important. So one of the things that we've done is we created a partnership with one of my favorite businesses, the North Shore Winery up in Lutzen, Minnesota. So for the last 4 years, we've actually been taking all of their grape mash, which before had actually been going into the landfill. And we've worked with them to create a process to get that grape mash onto our site. And basically I create compost piles with nothing but wood chips and grape mash. And I kind of create like a grape mash lasagna, and like one layer will be a Cabernet, the next layer will be a Syrah. So it's kind of a fun process. And it smells really good too. It's an enjoyable thing to work with. But then basically I, of course, because I love my puns and my ironies, and then I inoculate those compost piles with wine cap mushrooms, which is an edible mushroom. I personally like to eat it, and it's known to actually heavily colonize and really eat wood really quickly and other organic matter. So basically in the summer of 2019, I was inoculated. The spring of 2020 there, you can see it just burst forth with mushrooms. And then in the June of 2020, I was like, okay, well, let's see if this is ready. So I threw in some random squash. I think they were, butternut squash. And it basically walked away from them. And we had a really dry summer. It was one of the drier ones that we've had in a while up here. And I didn't water these beds once the entire summer, yet nature decided to just go to town. And that's the beauty of regeneration and composting and the power of taking these things back onto the land. And with a little bit of creative technique, and I think from those 5 squash plants I planted in that bed, I got almost 30 butternut squash, which was pretty amazing. So I can't take a lot of credit for that. I think nature kind of did most of it. But I appreciate nature's role, that's for certain. And yes, some of the grape seeds have actually started to germinate. So I'm hoping to get a cold, hardy Cabernet Sauvignon sometime soon. But again, coming back to the vision of what we're doing. And so now moving down into like our big earth working. And again, sometimes the process of regeneration, just like if we're working internally or externally, sometimes we have to dig some things up and root around and change some of those internal and external landscapes around. And that's what we did here. So basically we had to create a berm swale system because it was kind of a swampy, degraded piece of land. And you can kind of see it there in the beginning of 2017. And we laid out, used Hugelkultur again, kind of laid out these mounds and had a local person come in and do a little excavating. I wanted to use the on-site soil and show that you could actually take a really acidic and nutrient poor soil. I mean, it was bordering on battery acid acidity. Although I think David up there at Wolfridge, when he first did his test, he actually beat me on acidity levels. And then slowly started to reform these into berms and started cover cropping them again to get those living mycelium connections going in the soil, added some soil amendments, and then basically used cover crops and just kind of grew them, let them flower, cut them, and started that process over and over again over a couple of years. And in a few, just a soil regeneration process, I used cover cropping, I used soil amendments and liquid soil amendments. I won't read all of that stuff to you. And basically within a few short years, we had cover crops coming back filled with clover. There you could see goldenrods and asters just started to regenerate naturally in these beds. And then this past summer, spent a lot of time planting in the Perennial Framework. And that Perennial Framework is a lot of different types of berries. So we're experimenting with sea berries and honeyberries and currants and gooseberries, grapes, lots of different types of fruit trees you can see there, herbs and flowers. And one of the other things we're trialing out in the commercial level are different varieties of hazelnut and several varieties of elderberry. Again, looking and exploring different varieties and different plant groups. And there you can just see a beautiful panoramic of it in the midsummer. You can see all the cover crops are in bloom there. Mostly, I think that's tillage radish and then hairy vetch and some winter rye. And there, of course, just like Sarah, we had our own little bird's eye view looking down this past summer. You got to love technology these days. You can just fly high and get a crow's eye view. And again, what we're really aiming at in our project is small scale intensive farms and homesteads, trying to assist them, educate them, and create production systems that they can take and use, whether it's within the Northeast Minnesota region or in other cold climate zones across the northern states. Also doing a lot of mushroom cultivation, doing oyster mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms. Even though it's kind of cold up here still, I just went out and one of my shiitake logs is just bursting with little buds. So that makes me really happy. But we're also, experimenting with turkey tail and bluefoot and agaricus. And I'd love our little 2-acre woodland to turn into like a little mushroom mecca. And of course, then we're doing bees for honey and pollination and wax. So trying to hit all the different kingdoms and bring all these different agricultural systems together. And that's kind of what's going on there. You can tell that I tend to focus more on pictures of the land, whereas Sarah had all these amazing pictures of people and interactions. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but we were hoping 2020 to be our first year of like kind of starting to hold classes. Of course, that changed, but now we're prepping for 2021 and have high hopes. So, and now of course we also have a deep winter greenhouse that we partnered with the U of M as part of a statewide program. And there you can see we are growing food in the middle of the winter and bringing to the local Finland co-op. So. And yeah, and that's kind of what we're up to. Those are the colors that I get to enjoy in the middle of winter. Actually, that bottom right picture there of the salad, that was actually prepped and heading up to an event at Wolfridge. So that's what we're doing. That's our version of farming up here in the Agroecology Center. And I think that is the last of my slides. So I'm just going to turn it on over to David up at Round River. And let me just stop sharing here.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go quick now. I want to make sure there's time for question and answer. So I'm going to run a short presentation, really short. So hold on to your seats, and maybe some of us can stay past the hour for a more casual Q&A, which would be great to connect with some of you that I saw the names there. So I'm going to jump real quick. So let's see how fast we can do this. So I want to just say, here we are along the North Shore. That's our farm on the 40 acres. You can see Lake Superior back, Wolfridge is on the right, and Stefan's in the back corner. We also have the opportunity to steward the 80 acres south of us. You can see the hills of Wolfridge on the right there. Some of that's Wolfridge property. And this has been a great gift to our farm and to us as we get to spend time on this beautiful place, especially during COVID, and enjoy the space. And Lisa and I have started to live there basically 6 months in the wall tent. And so we live in, just a tough situation in that tent, yes. And the view is something. But our main focus over all these 33 years has been on the farm. We started with livestock, we had a dairy, we had chickens, we've had every animal you can imagine, from draft horses to cows to alpacas. But we're growing food, and that's been what we're doing. And I'm so glad the focus on soil, and I'm going to get to that. We ran a CSA for 20 years, online sales, farmers markets, growing food with hundreds of interns throughout the years. Growing foods on soil that's 22 inches deep to bedrock. Growing foods on soil that is now richer and growing lots more food per square feet. Intensive cropping. Growing all the foods we need for many people, bringing in about $40,000 of sales on less than an acre. And so this is the idea: intensive, nutrient-rich farming. By increasing soil fertility, we can increase all the good things about what agriculture can bring to our communities. We're sticking with our farmers market throughout this summer. We've shifted some to growing seeds. Seed growing is a whole different thing. You have to keep things a long time, save the seeds, select the best ones, and sell the less best ones, and keep enough for diversity, for genetic diversity. This is a solstice broccoli, beautiful big heads, not all at the same time, but throughout time, which is a perfect garden broccoli. Garlic. So we're also growing soil. We're going to keep doing that work. When you look at the soils across the country, 915 million acres. We've lost a lot of our topsoil, a third of our topsoil. We've lost a percent of organic matter. So what about organic matter? Organic matter is the life. We started with less than 1% of organic matter. Things grew about this tall and then croaked. And so what happens if you increase the organic matter? It only has 5,800 pounds per acre at that 0.5% rate. So we were able to increase much of our acreage to 15% organic matter. By doing that, we're now sequestering 174,000 pounds of carbon in the soil per acre. That's a lot of carbon. And if you extrapolate that throughout the country, with the 159 right in the chat, how do you actually say that number? There's a lot of carbon that can be sequestered by increasing organic matter. And naturally, the planet recycles 225 billion tons of carbon in and out of the system. But what our challenge is now, we're adding 5.5 billion tons per year. So we have a problem here. We're seeing the problem. We're feeling the problem. A lot of these slides are about addressing the problem. Just did a joint Round River Farm, a Wolfridge Agroecology, which looks at phenological indicators to determine planting calendars. looking at how it affects our wild harvest with wild rice and the bees that nurture our honey. We're working on the forest system migration project. This is through my university job. Wolfridge is one of 15 farms, Maxwell's Nursery, and ourselves, Round River, growing the trees, trying to address. The fact is, folks, if you're to come back in 50 years and we don't do something, we're going to be coming back to majority grasslands that look more like southern Minnesota. So we're planting these trees as the next generation to become the seed trees of tomorrow. We're growing energy and innovation to try and figure out how to do this in a way that everyone can do it on the planet. We're growing family and all the friends and people who've been through this farm. We're growing community. This is a picture of a few years ago with all 3 farms. We get together every Friday for a potluck and we learn from each other's farms. We share thoughts and how do we deal with those nematodes? There's good ones and there's bad ones. So I think you should also put in the chat who you think done it, who brought the nematodes. And one thing that we'll start to share with folks is we're working with Rebecca and a nonprofit that's working on developing a healing center in Finland. And we're looking to share our land with this people of color healing center that we will provide the food for, and we'll get to teach all sorts of people to how to grow food and then pass our farm on to the next generation of farmers to carry this forward in a much more equitable and justice way. And for that, I want to just ask people, we have a few minutes for questions. There's a closing that Russ and Pete need to do. And I think all 3 of us farmers would be willing to stay around at 6 o'clock or a little after and do a little informal Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over.
So there were a few questions in here already. And Sarah, I think I'm going to call on you just a little bit here. Something about cover crops. Can you explain? All of you use that phrase, cover crops. What's the deal with cover crops?
Well, appropriately, the term cover crop, you're just covering the soil when you don't have roots in the soil. So it's just a very purposeful way of feeding your soil biologies because they need those roots and the carbohydrates from those roots to thrive. And so when we don't have our vegetables growing in the soil, it's really beneficial for our soil life to have something to feed on so that they can then feed the roots of our vegetables. So that's why we keep the soil covered. And it's usually make up some kind of cover crop cocktail as a really diverse way to feed the different species of soil life. So so keep it green, cover the brown, keep it green.
One of the things I just learned on that, a good soil will consume about 6 to 8 cows worth of energy. So that's what that cover crop's doing. It's building that feed, like Sarah's saying, to feed the bugs, to feed that whole system. So imagine trying to feed 6 to 8 cows per acre. That's what's being consumed.
Excellent. Excellent. Hey, Austin, you've got a more complex question, and I suspect that I could read it, but you could probably take yourself off mute and just go ahead and ask the question, and I'll bet you the 3 of these would love that.
Yeah, hello. I had a question about sort of like a permaculture type model, if any of you had considered that, or if you think that'd be possible in northern Minnesota, being able to incorporate this idea of food growing into like preserving the land as like a forest as well.
Well, I'd say in many ways, it's certainly an aspect of what's the design behind the Agroecology Center. So what we're growing is effectively a food forest, which is one type of agroforestry. And permaculture definitely speaks to that idea of building a food forest, diversifying your perennials. So, a lot of our plantings are actually a mixture of herbs and berries and fruit trees. So we're kind of creating that different structure. We're mixing the plants together. So yeah, I think permaculture definitely has a lot of validity and a lot of insight that can be offered to farming. Just like any farming philosophy, I think it has its strengths and it has its weaknesses, but overall, I think it can offer a lot of inspiration.
Thanks, Austin, for asking that question. You know what? I am looking at the time here. David's right. Man, you went fast and you got a lot of information in there, man. Oh my goodness. But what we're going to do right now is I think we're going to pass it on to Peter Smerud here. And Peter, you had a few words for us, and then I think we're going on to Russ. And what I'd encourage folks is if you do have other questions, look, we're going to do our best to keep the farmers here when we're all done so that you can talk to them a little bit slower. But Pete, you're up.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, David and Sarah and Stefan. Great evening, really inspiring. I saw messages in there, people that didn't ask questions, just felt gratefulness for all that you're doing. And it takes a village to create a farm, it takes a village to feed themselves. And that I think one of the things that I would love to add is that David's research, he participated in at the U, that the people of northern Minnesota, a climate where even when the staff first came and talked to me, we need to build a farm. Like, really? In Finland? And yet the people of Finland in this area, northeastern Minnesota, can feed themselves. And this I've learned, and this has been proven. And we are doing it here at Wolfridge and at the Agroecology Center and around River Farm. And in this case, it's inspiring that it's now, while COVID was really challenging, look at what we did. We were feeding the people around Chisholm area and Silver Bay, both Western Lake County and Eastern St. Louis County. It's just a beautiful thing. I wanted to add a few things that are often asked at these events is, how is Wolfridge doing through all this COVID business? And I will tell you that we are gonna make it through COVID and come out as strong or stronger on the backside of all this. It has been a phenomenally challenging year, and we have pivoted in many ways at Wolfridge and had to make some significant sacrifices, but we're now doing hundreds of kids, sometimes per week, in virtual field trips. The work you've seen on the farm has been a shining light over this past year, and Wolfridge is reopening our facility for programming in June. And so this is a big celebration for us that we will be at smaller capacity this summer, looking towards a full occupancy opening if societal conditions allow, but that's what we're hoping and planning for now in September. And so I'm here to thank the people on the call, and many have given support to Wolfridge for our farm to get it going and to keep Wolfridge going through this whole pandemic. And with that, I'm going to give it to our chair of the Board of Trustees. Russ Bierbaum has joined us this evening. Russ has chaired the board and been on the board for many years. And Russ, I'll let you close us out this evening.
Thanks, Pete. And thanks to everyone. You can tell we have a very talented staff. When the idea of a farm first came to the board, as boards often do, where's the money going to come from? Great idea. Where's the money going to come from? Well, David took the bull by the horns and got money. Sarah's carried on that tradition of getting grants and money. And in addition to the grants that we got from numerous organizations, some governmental organizations and some foundations, there's a number of personal donations and individuals, our supporters, that have kept us going, and we need that to continue. I'm so proud of what happened this last year in the era of COVID, that what we did is kept the farm going, and we helped a lot of people in the process, and that's great. And now we're poised, hopefully, to use that food that we're going to produce this year with students that will be back up at Wolfridge. And Sarah and her crew is getting all that prepared and underway. And I'm looking forward to a much better year than we had last year. But those of you that so feel inclined to give us some funds to help this great project going, please feel free to donate. I think there was a link on the invitation you got originally, and make use of that, please. And Stefan, you're a great neighbor to have. I had no idea of everything you were doing, and dovetails so much of what Sarah and David have done at Wolfridge. So a great team up in Finland. Who would have thought? Finland, Minnesota. Thank you.
Pretty amazing. Excellent. Well, thank you, Russ. Thank you, Pete. I'm going to put our farmers back on here. And if you're okay with staying a little bit here, I think I'm going to turn it back to folks if they have a few questions. But I also want to thank everybody for being here and sharing this with us. If you're going to be leaving now, I am recording this, and so we're going to put it on our website. We're going to put a variety of links. Sarah shared a ton of links with me that she thought you might be interested in that I put in the chat, but those will be on the website as well. But I think that what we can do is, if there are any questions, why don't we turn it back to all of our farmers? Here, let's see if I can get them all here. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. Are there any questions from anybody?
I saw someone had posted the question about mushrooms. Sarah had thrown out a really good link. Field and Forest Products. They're a great company over in Eastern, I believe it's Eastern Wisconsin. Yeah, and yes, I think definitely we could either be cultivating our own or finding ways to encourage, more wild mushrooms throughout the woods. But that's I love the idea of using mushrooms and making sure we incorporate the fungal kingdom into our food system. It's not just the plant, not just the animal, but can't forget about the fungi.
There was another farmer here, Stefan, another farmer, Lisa, who is asking about bears in your compost.
I've never had a problem with bears in the compost. They've taken out my beehives, but they haven't taken out my compost.
No drunk bears running through the forest with all your wine mash.
Actually, the funny thing is, you know who gets into the grape mash? The deer.
Oh.
Yeah, I've chased the deer away from that grape mash so many times because I'm sure that's the young ones out there, like when the parents aren't looking.
And you too, there was also the question about deer encroachment, which people all over Minnesota deal with. And David, it might be a good time to talk fence, the design, but both of you, all three of you, that has to be a challenge that you're dealing with.
Well, I will say Wolfridge was the guinea pig on the fence. And by the time I built my fence of the same type, I figured out all the bugs. Funds had to adjust. Deer are just tough. They're really, really tough. People have tried. Sarah's doing row coverings and all sorts of stuff to try and deter them. Anything successful, Sarah, Stefan?
We actually started using our trellis netting. I think they get kind of hung up in it. And it just is maybe just frustrating because at first they were actually breaking through it because it's such lightweight material, but we kept repairing it. So we were more tenacious than they were.
Stefan, this might be a question for you. Can you describe a little bit about the inoculating logs with the spores for the mushrooms?
Yeah, it's actually a fairly simple and straightforward process. You can get either sawdust, or it comes in the form of sawdust, or it comes in the form of little like pegs or plugs. And literally all you do, it's like you cut the trees down that you need, and there are different types of mushrooms need different types of trees. And again, Field and Forest, amazing website. They have all that information on there for you, lots of videos. But there, yeah, you cut it in the spring to the size you want, usually about 3 to 3.5 feet long, and you drill holes into your logs, and then you put in the sawdust, or you take a little hammer and plug in the peg, and then you set them back in the woods in the shade, and then you just wait and you wait. But man, once they decide to start going, it's pretty amazing.
Excellent. Hey, David, you've had a lot of experience with this, I'm sure. What do you do with your used landscaping cloth and plastics?
Well, that is a challenging thing. So we try to reduce what we use. So we don't really use any for planting in. Our biggest challenge is the greenhouse plastic. At some point you need to pull it, and we then use it for all sorts of covering of other things. And then when it's finally done, so use as much. I actually was at a hearing with the oil company, and they were talking about it was corn oil. They were talking about all the cool things they could doing oil products. But the idea, so I said, build us some greenhouse plastic that will last with that oil and the materials. So we've got to figure out how to make a greenhouse plastic that's truly, truly biodegradable, because a lot of plastic waste happens through agriculture. And so it's a real challenge, and there's no real good solution than minimize, reuse, and figure out how to farm best without it.
Yeah.
Stefan used a lot of cardboard, which is really helpful.
Oh, nice.
I'll throw one out there that I think some people may not know what CSA means, and more importantly, what a CSA is and does for a farmer, for a community. Someone want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So CSA just stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And I don't know, when did that start getting hot? 80s, maybe in the 80s?
Late 80s here.
Yeah. So it's basically, it's like a subscription to a magazine, or what we used to have subscriptions to magazines, I guess. Yeah. And so it's you can get like a box of vegetables a week is really the most common structure that you'll see, but it's a way for the farmer to get funds up front. So you say you pay $500 for this season, say it's 16 weeks, and this is really similar to what we're doing this year and what we did last year. So you pay up front. The farmer has those funds then to buy the supplies, the seed, support the labor that they need. And so you in turn are supporting your community farm. And then your farmer is providing you with the most nutrient dense local vegetables possible. So it's really a win-win. And it's been really popular. And I think it's still, I think it's getting its second wind after this pandemic has started, which is, if something good has to come out of the pandemic, this is certainly one of them.
Mm-hmm. So Jen might be in the cities asking where would be a good place to start to search for a good CSA in the cities.
That's a good one.
Yeah, the Land Stewardship Project is an awesome one. It's a great resource, actually. Minnesota Grown also has a list of CSA farms, although I'd imagine that pretty much any CSA farms would be listed in Land Stewardship Project. Christy, you are 100% right.
See, you don't have to say sorry, Christy. Thank you for helping. And then I'm going to say we have one last question right here. And Lauren, I'm going to make you speak. Ask your question.
Of course you are, Joe. Of
Yes.
course you are. So my question, I'm very new to gardening, but I'm very inspired by what I've been hearing, and I've wanted to start a garden for a while. So what, if any, are your favorite tips for enriching your soil to help grow those healthy, strong plants that are resilient to all the pests and whatever else they need to fight against?
Get a cow. No, but seriously, my favorite compost is manure based. So if you can find a good manure based compost, I don't know where you are. Where are you?
So I'm in the cities. I'm west of the cities. And Jen, if you're interested, Trumpeter Swan Farm in Buffalo is an excellent CSA, for the record. But yeah, so I'm in Western Twin Cities region.
So
hunt down some farms out there. There's a lot of farms, kind of like, well, they're more horse farms. They're not too many cattle farms, but I've gotten a lot of manure from horse farms out there and horse stables, kind of west of the cities there. It's one option.
You'll want to compost it so it kills the seeds, because they'll come with a lot of weed seeds. But one of the interesting things when we're designing the Wolfridge farm, its design size is to be run by oxen. And so as it's going into the future and things change in the world, it's the perfect size for a couple teams of ox, which would get all the manure you need to keep it going.
So just, doesn't the manure burn the roots? Don't you have to like season it for a while?
Unless it's llama manure. I agree with Christy there. Well, alpaca or llama, either one, you can just turn that straight into the soil, no burning involved. Same with rabbit manure. Rabbit manure is also good that way. But many manures will, if they're hot, means they have too much ammonia in them and they do need to be composted to kind of settle that all together. So yes, for the most part, it's a good idea to compost unless you have a llama in your backyard.
What if you're the Abazas and you have a moose in your backyard? Would that work good too?
I never used moose manure. I don't know.
Our first compost piles were moose and bear poop.
You know, I think that's a perfect place to end. So thank you, everybody. That's going to be on the video as well. Thank you for joining, everybody. Have a great evening and think about moose manure as your compost.
Thank you for coming. Happy Earth Day, everyone.